due to copyright laws and difficulties sharing the podcast across different platforms, the music unfortunately had to be removed from the original recordings. I hope this doesn't spoil your enjoyment or interrupts the flow too much.
You are an Iron Man!
So this is episode 12, and it's a first international podcast here. Don't know how this is going to pan out. We're using technology. We're linking in with Barney McCullagh over in Doha. Barney,
how are you doing there? Yeah.
Great to have you on the podcast, and I've been following you for quite a while now on Instagram, and obviously you're a native of Oma. So what has brought you from Oma to Qatar and around the world, presumably with Iron Man? Tell us a wee bit about your adventures and your kind of beginnings.
I suppose I'll start with how I got into triathlon first, and as some people may know, I worked as a lifeguard in the Life Centre, and I met lots of different characters around the Oma Life Centre, and basically I have to actually credit Albert Law. He was the first guy I met in the triathlon, and he geared me up to do lane ball triathlon. This was in 2011, and like everybody told me about Albert Law, he was really did triathlons are really fast, and so for my first race, my goal was just to beat Albert. I didn't want this older gentleman to show me up, but he was telling me about all his training and stuff. And but to be honest, the reason I mention Albert is he said something very powerful to me at the time, and it doesn't even sound like much of a compliment, but it stuck with me. He goes to me, "Geez, Barney, you're queer and skinny. You'd be a good triathlete." Or he sort of was saying that, you were built for triathlon. And I grew up doing lots of different sports, but I never really was, I was fairly small, fairly light. And then this sort of clicked with me that like, this is something I could be good at, naturally, me build and stuff. But it was actually the power of that compliment that was really powerful, and something that I try to do in my own coaching. You never know what you might say to something. Like, it was probably kind of nearly an insult if I took it that way. He says, "You're queer and skinny," but I took it a different way. And I just sort of, as a coach, your words can be powerful to change. That probably changed my trajectory of my life, because I got into the sport, I really loved it, and it just snowballed from there. So that was kind of how I got into the sport. And then again in the Life Centre, I worked as a lifeguard, and I used to see like Peter Skeffington and Sean Healy, Jared Turbot. But the thing that inspired me, those guys, I noticed the Iron Man tattoo. And once I seen that, I was like, these guys they're kind of like, I don't know, they're just like, it was really cool to hear what the distances they were swimming at the time. They used to tell me they're going to swim 2 miles. They used to speak in miles, which I thought was mental, because cruise in meters.
Yeah.
Everybody in Northern Ireland speaks in miles, but I just used to think it was amazing that these guys were able to jump in and swim 2 miles, and then that sort of got me the wheels of motion into doing triathlon. And I did my first triathlon in 2011 at Lane Ball. That's sort of how I got into the sport, and then sort of fell in love with the sport, and then trying a lot was always a big race for me. Probably in the A race, just because it means so much, those local races. Yeah.
So
that's how I got into the sport.
Yeah. Great to tip the hat there to Albert. Albert's still, I suppose he's widely recognised within the Oma area anyway as definitely a legend, a great character and a great man. And I know what you mean. It's almost like a double-edged sword. That you're wearing skinny, but you'd be wearing good at triathlon sort of thing. You know?
So it's kind of just a typical bit of a slagging, but that sort of was still a compliment to me because I was like, geez, you might be right. I could be good at this because growing up, I would have played Gaelic football. I would have played a bit of basketball, but I'm 5'8" on a good day, so I was never going to be good as a basketball player. But so then I found that, and then when it becomes almost a bit of your identity. You become a bit better at it, and then it's like, I sort of associate myself with better people, and it was all a snowball effect to better things. If you surround yourself with good people who mostly are in the sport, were healthy people, and it was just good for me.
I correct me if I'm wrong, but you're quite humble with regards to your reference there to Try the Lock and how you enjoyed taking part in it. If my memory serves me right, you're a man who liked to take that course apart. You attacked Try the Lock. I mean, every time you went out on Try the Lock, you give her Dixie, for want of a local term. But I mean, you've podiumed in Try the Lock, and you've won.
I won it in 2016. I'll not be humble now.
I go for it.
I won it in 2016, and we used to have the course record. James Walton and me both broke it that day, 2015. But then recently, Luke McCarn has really smashed it. He's put a really good stamp on the course record. So I was one of the top 3 fastest times around the course. But the course changed a little bit, though. I know the course really well, and so you could say maybe the course is a bit different. But yeah, I really targeted that race. It used to be just one I wanted to do well, and
Yeah, it's a great event. I'm looking forward to it this year again. It's always slotted in on the first Saturday in August, so we're all geared up towards it again, and very much looking forward to that. So you've dipped your toe into triathlon. You've started laying ball. You've had a few sprints. How did it sort of move then to the next level for you then, Barney?
So I always was sort of inspired by Ironman, and I've still not done a full Ironman yet. I've sort of worked on a half Ironman distance at the minute, and I'm just working on sort of performing better at that race. So recently, I've got my times down to now 4:08 and 4:11 for a half Ironman. So ideally, I'm going to stick at this to get closer to the 4 hours, and then maybe I'm thinking about doing an Ironman. Just to the timing, and Ironman's a big commitment. I have a young daughter now and another on the way. So I think half Ironman is a nice balance between not being too crazy of training and it's still consistency wise. But I will move to Ironman eventually. But I just want to, because it's taken me a long time to get better at the half Ironman. I had to learn a lot about my physiology and how I was actually a bit more geared towards the shorter distance stuff. So I've always traditionally done better in the sprint distance. But then as I moved up to the longer stuff, I really struggled. Even though I was feeling really fit before the race, I felt I had good endurance. But it just really depends on how your sort of physiology is geared. And this can affect your pacing, even your carbohydrate intake. All these things are, if you're geared more towards that fast twitch sort of area, you'll be more glycolytic, and it means you'll burn more fuel. Basically, you're burning more petrol, if that makes sense to give an analogy. And then someone who's more, say, we would call them the diesel, a bit sort of lower on that VLA max physiology side, they would be more fat adapted, so they can go longer without sort of using those glycogen stores. That's kind of makes sense. So it took me a long time to sort of shift my training to get better at the longer stuff.
So in terms of just trying to break that down for someone like me, so I would not be, and I'm certainly not as clued in as you, and it's one of the reasons why I was very keen to have you on the podcast was to try and help me understand how someone like me can be better at the training and the sort of things that I might want to do. But just you mentioned there about, different physiologies, and I suppose it's a very, very unique thing. There's no such thing as a one plan fits all, really, is there?
Yeah, no, so you'd have to have sort of the quickest way of doing it would be if you did a bike profile test. Say if you had someone do a 5-second sprint, a 20-second sprint, a 1 minute, 3 minute, and you would get all their profile. That would give you the best visual of like if you're very strong at like 20-minute efforts, or if you're very good at your sprints. That kind of tells you whether that person is a Ferrari that can go fast, or that person is like a diesel tractor, goes all day but less fuel, but can't have that explosive sprint. And you can probably tell the type of guys that are those people. You probably know from like some training sessions you do, there's somebody that has good wheels at the end of a race. They probably are more that the Ferrari, say, just for the analogy, like they can go faster, and then the other guy who maybe can go all day at a dedicated pace, he's probably more that diesel kind of. And the training would be a bit different for those two athletes depending on their event, because if they were training for a short distance triathlon, you'd want to be that faster guy, but that faster guy, the Ferrari as we call him, wouldn't do so well in the Ironman because his physiology is very geared towards burning a lot of fuel and being less efficient at those longer paces. Mm-hmm. So I think does that make sense? I'm trying to.
No, that there makes sense. Yeah, that's it's a really good analogy. So you are the proverbial Ferrari. Then we'll refer to you as the Ferrari. You're like.
I'm trying, but it's great for sprint distance triathlon to be this sort of that way geared. But it's really pinched me in the half Ironman stuff. Like I've had to walk, even though I could run a relatively good 5k and 10k. And even half marathon, I sometimes was pinched then, and I was just walking at the end of those races because I probably was biking a bit hard too, but I really should have been. My training before it wasn't really geared the right way to get me on the start line in the best shape. So I've had this there's training sessions you can do that would help this, like doing overgear sessions on the bike, then maybe. Doing some sort of fasted training, a small amount of this, like might help you utilize fat as fuel. So just trying to change that a little bit. But I would be a bit cautious advising fasted training because a lot of athletes then do too much, and then it can be very bad for your there's a syndrome called Red syndrome, and then that can be it can be quite. There's no energy for training and stuff. So I exercise a bit of caution when advertising. Fasted sessions.
So tell me a wee bit then, just in relation to your own story, your own sort of personal journey from, if we go from, let's say we'll go from the lane ball triathlon to your most recent or your best 70.3. So how did you work out how to transition from that keen, eager Lightning McQueen Ferrari guy to retuning the engines?
Well, I didn't show any real promise at the start. I actually remember this exactly. I came 126th in the first lane ball. So I did an hour and 28 minutes or something. There was no Lightning McQueen then. Like I was definitely, I swam 18 minutes for the 750. So now I'm swimming closer to 10 minutes. So it definitely was not Lightning McQueen at the start. But I did know one thing. I really loved the sport. And I think that's probably the main thing is that this is going to sound bad from a triathlon coach, but triathlon is quite boring. It's lots of swimming, lots of biking, and lots of running. You have to really love it to keep doing it. You have to have some variety in your training and stuff, but generally it's a lot of swimming, a lot of biking, and a lot of running. But I knew I really loved it, and I wanted to get better. And those first years were actually, I've not improved as much since. Because the next year I came back, I think I took 18 minutes off the time or something. And I'll never improve like that again. So those first years were the best in terms of actual improving, percentage of improvement. But so just basically from that first race then, I just sort of was trying to work on things, and really I knew that long term I needed to work on my swim, because it was the race dynamic was I was at the back, and then I would maybe come up a bit in the bike, and then I would catch more people, but it's a nicer way to race if you come out of the swim in a better place, and then you can sort of attack the race. So I kind of knew that the swimming was it's probably the hardest and takes the longest to fix. So I had to work on that the most, and it's something actually generally I'm most proud of, because biking and running sort of came quite naturally, but the swimming was something that I had to really work on without really seeing much improvement over time, and then it sort of all clicked, I suppose.
So
that doesn't answer the question. That's more about so then I moved on from those, sort of took a methodical enough approach about improving on, and then each year I just targeted the national series in triathlon in the Irish scene. Kept going then, so started in 2011, kept doing the national series each year, coming some seconds in the national series events, second and thirds, and then I suppose my best result at a national championships was fifth in 2016. At that time I had moved to Limerick and was doing my masters there, and there was a really good training group there where I was training with most people who were either the current national champion or trying to qualify for the Olympics. So I really was training with people way better than me, but it was a really good eye-opener of how they operate and how they do their training sessions. And I lived next door to a 50-metre pool at the University of Limerick. I had running track, running trails, good training group, and I think I really learned a lot from me years at Limerick. So yeah, then after Limerick, I suppose I was then a qualified teacher. It was time to get a real job. So then I moved back home from Limerick, and I was kind of not mad, but I had such a good setup there that moving back to like Oma, 25-metre pool, back living home with mum. It wasn't I don't know, I had to be independent then. And also I'd spent all this time becoming a teacher, and literally the first year I couldn't get a teaching job. I was doing lots of cover. I was basically a substitute teacher. Managed to get some cover in schools locally in Oma and Strabane, and then basically that summer I was back to working in Glendale in the shop, filling petrol. And I spent all this time trying to be a teacher, and I'm back doing a job I could have done since I was 16. And then, just a stroke of luck, a good friend came in to the store, and she says, I'm heading out to Doha. And then I says, I'd love to move out there. I'm a qualified teacher. This was Nicola, I'll give her a shout out, Nicola Gartland. And then she basically said, she came back that evening and said, the school I'm going to is looking for a PE teacher. And with that, I just sent an email and got in touch with them, had an interview, and the next thing I know, I was on a plane to Doha. And that was it. That's where I moved out in 2017. So I only stayed at home for 1 year, because I really wanted to be a teacher, and I was just going to be a substitute teacher for such a long time. So I'll try and give the fast version of this. Then I worked over here in Doha as a PE teacher. I was a full-time PE teacher, mostly with primary school, even though I'm a secondary teacher. So I was teaching a lot of primary school, but the really cool thing about out here is all the PE curriculum is to do with swimming. So 50% of my teaching hours was teaching kids to swim, and I think this really helped me coaching, because I got to see kids from ages 3 all the way up to 18, and you got to see how strokes develop over time, and I think it gave me a really good understanding that maybe a lot of other more experienced high-level swim coaches actually haven't experienced that, just that really rudimentary sort of beginner stages, like even just getting kids to splash their face with water is a big lesson, like literally those blowing bubbles, literally from that level to then, teaching them butterfly, backstroke, individual medley, more technical things. So I feel like I have a good spectrum of the knowledge from total beginner and where if you want to be sort of more stroke development. But worked here as a teacher for the past 7 years, and then luckily I was doing some national series races here. I won the national series here 3 times. So then I kind of got a bit of a I was doing some coaching on the side, and then it eventually sort of snowballed that I thought, well, I'm doing enough coaching now, I could just quit teaching. So this past year, I'm full time with triathlon, and so I'm doing a big training group. I'm coaching around, it varies, but around 20 to 25 athletes, and we have a sort of a small training group. They're mostly local to Doha, but in that time, as I was teaching, I also worked with the National Federation, and we went to Qatar is very developing sort of in terms of triathlon, and so we took the first ever team to the World Championships for age group in Gold Coast. So I got to go as the age group coach for the World Championships in the Gold Coast in Australia. So that was my first time going to Australia as an age group coach, but it was really good. And actually, they also got me to be a delegate at the meetings so I was there with all the presidents of all the national federations, and I don't know how all this all snowballed from me working in Glendale one day at the filling petrol, and then the next thing I'm in. But I suppose the message of that is just, if you see an opportunity, you should be just taking it and going for it, because all these things snowballed because I took the chance, I suppose. I obviously wanted to be a teacher, but there was all these knock-on effects that would never have happened if you didn't take the chance, I suppose.
No,
I think, did I answer your question?
Yeah, it certainly did. I love the journey, because everybody that I've spoken to and most people that I speak to outside of the podcast and it's one of the things that I want to try and bring to this podcast is this idea that we've all started somewhere. We've all started as that kid in the swimming pool, for example, with regards to swimming, and people can be quite sort of hard on themselves, and they can limit their own self-belief, and they can hold themselves back, and they can create excuses. And it's just, I love the idea that we've all started somewhere, and it's nice to be able to hear that, your first swim was 18 minutes and things that got there and how you were able to work on that. And it's something that I've seen within the club as well. You see people coming along, particularly in the swim, where they come in and they're very apprehensive even about getting into the swim, and then they do really, really well, which is it's unreal.
Yeah, I think triathlon is one of the best things for adult swimmers learning to swim. The amount of people I know who were petrified of water, but they wanted to do the triathlon was like the dangling carrot, and they wanted to do it, and then they got into a lock, which was another big fear, jumping in the lock. And then once they had that done, I mean, that's going to help them if they have kids and they see their parents doing it. It's going to have a knock-on effect. Like, even just it's and just sticking with it is the main thing as well. As you're saying, they see so much improvement. They think they're going to have to be great at it straight away, but it just takes time. And if you stick at it, you'll definitely see improvements.
No, and that's the message, really. Stick at it, keep chipping away, keep turning up, keep showing up. So, Barney, just in relation to coaching, I think we'll maybe break this down into the three different aspects of triathlon. So we'll do swim and then bike and then run. But what I'm very interested in, and it's great to hear how you have been able to be in the position to watch those kids splashing about, messing about in the pool, getting confidence, blowing bubbles, doing all those wee bits and bobs, and then watching them progress and actually ending up helping and coaching at a really, really high level. So you really do have a real good insight into swimming and into the stroke, and you're able to see what it's like from a real natural, raw, untrained, untapped potential from a 3-year-old, and carrying all the knowledge in your head and seeing all this in action has given you, I guess, a bit of insight that maybe a lot of swim coaches maybe don't have. Is that right or wrong, or am I reading too much into the situation?
No, I think you're being very kind. That's good, but so I think maybe I might have a more holistic view, is that the right word? Holistic view of like all the intricacies of swimming. Say if you're a competitive swim coach who's walking up and down in the pool deck, it's very different to when you're teaching very beginners. You're in the water, you're with them, you're holding them, you're watching, they don't drown. It's a bit more hands-on, so it's a bit different in a sense, but I'm sure that those guys would have an insight to competitive coaching that I wouldn't have, because they're spending so much time on the pool deck. So I suppose it's just different. Not one is better than the other, but I do know, I think, a good trajectory of someone totally starting out. Like we might have, we call it early years here, but with nursery. The nursery kids would come in, and for them, at the young age, if any parents are listening to this, I don't think you actually need to do swimming lessons. You need to bring your child to the pool, have fun and play games at that really young age. It's not really about, I see some parents trying to move their arms and you're not going to develop a stroke with a 2 or 3 year old. They want to play and have fun, and that's what it should be. And they associate the pool with a positive thing. That's all you have to do. I don't think you need to do much more till they're a bit older and they can sort of have better body management to, perform a stroke. So, So I think I have a good enough insight of the intricacies of the early years up to swimming. But yeah, more to triathlon. I think it's a bit different because you have sometimes maybe adults learning to swim, and they maybe have their old way of swimming, or they think they're swimming with the right technique, and this can be the challenge to break them down and to sort of change their stroke, especially if it's a bit more ingrained. And one of the best ways I've found is doing some swim analysis with them, because often you think you're swimming a certain way, but with your head down in the water, you can't see what your arms are doing. And it's probably been the quickest breakthroughs with people when I show them the video of the slow motion of what they're doing maybe wrong, and then they actually can see it. So I suppose if anyone's listening there, if you can get a video of yourself swimming, most people will know good technique. Like if you went to, let's just say Oma Leisure Centre, and you seen someone in the pool, you could pick out the good swimmer and the bad swimmer. You don't have, I'm not saying you don't have to be a coach to know a nice stroke.
Yeah.
And so it's very powerful to just see yourself swimming. I think that's a really good, now it can be a bit tricky video in the pool sometimes, but I would definitely recommend just seeing yourself, because it gets you more buy-in to actually fix the errors. So that's sort of my one tip, is definitely try and get a video of yourself swimming, just to see any of your errors.
Yeah, that is a very valuable tip. Something we've been able to do a couple of years ago, we were able to get that done as well. We had a video analysis carried out, and it was so valuable. Just that idea of, how your hand is going into the water, whether it's fingertips and then wrist and then elbow, even right through to the under the water as well, is obviously very, very, it really opens your eyes. You get a sense whenever you're pulling the water, that you think in your head that it's all going perfectly well, but then when your hand's in the water, it's swaying backwards and forwards, it's weaving, it's maybe going in underneath your body.
You're not maybe catching the water.
Yeah.
Maybe you're not going wide enough, or maybe you're going too narrow. Those sort of things are very valuable. And then the common mistakes, I would say, not mistakes, but the real difficulty is most triathletes or adults who've learned to swim, myself included, if you've learned to swim at say 20 plus and you've not been a child swimmer, you're probably not going to have a good body position in terms of your hips. So I'd say, as a sweeping statement, most triathletes are faster with a pull buoy between their legs, because it lifts up the hips. So a big thing that I sort of see is lots of triathletes who are very motivated and they want to fix their body position. They think that doing, say, loads and loads of kick will help, that body position. It's very difficult, I think, to fix the body position from your kick. If you've not been a kid swimmer, it's very hard to really develop that well-developed kick. And actually for triathlon, I'm not saying you don't need to kick, but you need to kick enough so that your body position is flat with the water. You're not really kicking for propulsion. You're more so kicking that you can get the most out of your pull and you're finishing your strokes. So I would look at kick as, I'm not saying it's not important, but it's more about the kick is more to enable a better body position. And that's sort of something I see a lot of triathletes sort of struggling with because their hips are sinking, and it's like driving with the brakes on. That's one of the common things that I work on. So you'd still want to develop your kick, but just enough to get your body position a bit better.
So in terms of trying to then address that, where we have those sinking legs for some people, is that a case of focusing on other aspects outside of the pool? Is it a wee bit about doing core strength work, or is it more about focusing on the pull and the
a lot of the kick should be coming from your glutes. So you should actually be kicking from the glutes and not from the knee, which is common. Sort of some people are almost look like they're cycling a bike underneath. So you'd actually want to practice maybe sitting on pool side with straight legs, toes pointed, and a slight flexion in the knee. Then you'd want your kick coming from your glutes. That's going to make a better kick. And then a really good tip, I can't take credit for this, it's a nice visual. It's called a ballerina in a bucket. Mm-hmm. So if you can imagine a ballerina up on her tiptoes, but she's confined to the bucket. So your toes are really pointed, but you don't want, the reason you say bucket is because you don't want these large, wide kicks. It's kind of confined to that area within the bucket as such. That's from effortless swimming, but it's a really powerful, I think, analogy just to get your head around. Your kick should be controlled, not big, large, wide, splaying kicks, because we all know about aerodynamics on the bike. You try and stay low, and it's the same with swimming. You don't want to have these big, wide legs because that's like drag in cycling. So you can definitely do things just to make your kick more efficient. But again, you would need to practice this. But I don't think doing like thousands of kilometers of kicking is going to fix it. It's more about the technique of it and getting your body position better.
And what would be your thinking then with regards to the drills and those kind of alternating sessions where you're doing a wee bit of speed work and then you're doing more long work? And, suppose for me, the longer, slower sessions give me an opportunity to really think about my technique and to try and kind of fine-tune that a wee bit and obviously builds a wee bit of stamina. And then the speed stuff too. Sometimes I struggle with the speed stuff, like my form kind of goes out the window at times, and it's difficult even as someone who is a reasonably good swimmer. I struggle whenever it comes to maintaining my form on those short bursts, those 25 sprints or those 200 meters at tempo. What would be your kind of advice for that, trying to maintain that thing whenever everything, your head says go, 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 and then your form just goes out the window and you have to catch yourself and you're going, oh my God, I'm struggling here, I can't breathe, and you get yourself in a fluster.
Sort of that's the kind of, swimming is the one sport where if you try harder you get worse. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So if I'm on the bike and I push the power, I go faster. If I'm on the track and I try and run faster, I go faster. But often in swimming, it's about being controlled and strong rather than flaying your arms. So I would actually probably tell you to try and take the speed down a wee bit, to hold the technique, and then try and push it that little bit whilst keeping technique at all times. Now, obviously, if you're just working on, like, sometimes coaches will say for a sprint distance triathlon, you might work on the breakout speed, the first 100 meters. that's when you're going really fast to try and get in a good group. So that stuff you have to do really hard. But I would try to keep your technique almost at all times, not forgetting it even for the shorter stuff. But in a normal training week, you would like to have a different blend of endurance, maybe VO2 max swimming, and then some maybe one session where you're doing some technique stuff. But the drills, I would try to, if you've got this video I was talking about your technique, I'd then be looking at your weaknesses and then trying to address. There's no point you doing the drills that aren't specific to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're better off doing stuff that's going to really help you, and that's where maybe speaking to another swim coach or asking, what can you see in my stroke that would maybe help? Like, just for an example, someone has really lazy arm. You might want them then doing some high elbow for entry and stuff. Just that's how I would coach it. And so in a warm-up, I might have different athletes doing different warm-up drills. Before we do the main set would be all similar, but for different athletes, I would have them even just swimming 100 meters, but saying, look, can you focus on finishing your stroke a bit better, or can you focus on maybe a bit of a high elbow fingertip drag drill for you? That would be best. So some of the warm-ups will be a bit different for everyone, but trying to just get the most out of it, because drills are very specific to the person.
Good stuff. No, that's valuable information there, Barney. Thank you for helping that. If we'll treat this like a triathlon, so if we move now towards the bike, I'm excited and petrified about what you're going to talk about on the bike, because I forgot transition now.
Yeah, so I'll do a quick one on transition.
Go ahead.
This is like free time. This is like absolutely requires zero fitness to put on your shoes. It requires zero fitness to put on your helmet. It's just something you need to practice. So like when I see some of the guys in coaching taking really long in transition, I'm like, do you know how much training you have to do to increase your, say, half marathon by 5 minutes? And some guys are like losing that in their transition and, say, a long distance race. Like the weeks, it would take months, maybe years to increase on 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. But you've got the opportunity to just put your shoes on a bit quicker.
Yeah.
That's the low hanging fruit. That's the first thing before we even do any training. You practice putting your shoes on, because it's just free time. It's still part of the race. The clock is still going. That's like, just, I don't know. It sometimes baffles me mind that people train about the hours they're training and the work they're doing, and they're tired from their training. But all it takes is putting your shoes on a bit quicker, and you might beat the person that you're trying to race. Or that's my 10 cents on that. I had to get that out there, because I'm always saying this one, but it definitely has to be fixed, I think. And it's just easy. It's the easiest one to fix.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the guys in trying to grapple with a pair of knee high, compression socks and stuff. And I'm like, I'm in and out there as quick as possible. I just want to stress, I'm not the fastest guy in T1, but I normally get in and out within a minute. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's true. That's totally fine with me. It's just when people are sitting down having a sandwich.
Yeah, I
just think it's still part of the race. It's not. Now, obviously, people do sport for different reasons, but if you're trying to race, you should be. The transition's a very integral part of the race, and it should be raced. It shouldn't be a rest. So we can move on to bike.
All right, no, good shout. T1's locked and loaded. We're on the bike. As I was saying, I'm excited and petrified about what you're going to say now, because I haven't a clue about bikes. I know that I have to put a certain amount of pressure into my bike. I literally couldn't really tell you much about my bike, to be honest. I know that it's a giant TCR, and it's a pretty colour. So
I also have TCR. This is my bike room, actually. We're in the turbo room.
Brilliant.
Not looking for listeners there, but I have a TCR bike as well.
So talk to me
what questions do you have?
I'm a complete novice on cycling. I'm still trying to find. I'm trying to find out about cycling. Cycling appeals to me, but it also leaves me quite frustrated. I seem to be someone who, whenever I initially get on the bike, my legs get quite heavy quite quick, and then I settle down into it, and then I'm okay. I'm good to go. And then there comes a period sort of towards the end where my legs kind of just feel that they're smashed. So it might be something that you might have touched on earlier on in our discussions, where maybe I'm trying to transition from trying to sort of suss out my physiology to find out what or how I need to tweak things. I suspect it's down to just not having the power or the muscle mass in my legs. So I'm just curious to find out what I can do to improve my bike, just really generally.
Yeah, usually when I would have these conversations with people say they're coming on board for coaching, I would sort of look through their training data and sort of from the training data and the power, say if they use a power meter, you can really tell all this stuff, because you could look at like what's their best 20-minute power and what's their best 5-minute power, etc. And you kind of get to see a bit of their profile. But then I would know what type of training they're needed or what's their weakness, depending on their event. So if they're training for a sprint triathlon, or it's very different to an Ironman, and what they'll need to be good at for that. So that's kind of what I would do, is look at the profile and then decide sort of strengths, weaknesses, where they need to work on, and So
one of the things that I don't have is a power meter, for example.
I would say you get one.
It's just a pity nobody can see the facial expression.
Actually, the best workaround, I think, is just buying a home. Well, see, living in Doha, it's like right now it's probably about 40 degrees outside. So, I do a lot of indoor training, but it's the most bang for buck in terms of training. So I might do a 90-minute turbo session, but it's very productive. And every minute that I'm on that bike, I'm getting a wee bit better, or it's good training. So I'm a big advocate. Some people hate it, but I just kind of got used to it and do a bulk of my training. Actually, I only ride outdoors once a week on a Friday with the group. The rest of the week I'm doing shorter turbo sessions indoors, and it's just, I can control all variables. I can control the power, I can control my cadence, I can control my heart rate. I have kind of drinks on board, cooling drinks. So it's just more about, for that session, it's very specific, geared, and I'll get far more out of than if I was to go outside. Also, training here in Doha, the roads are not safe. Like, it wouldn't be safe at all. Lots of people driving big trucks, people on their phone. It's just there's a dedicated cycle path. That's where I ride every Friday. It's 33 kilometers long, and it's totally safe. That's where we do the bulk of our training. So basically, yeah, I would say definitely the power meter would be a good option, or an indoor trainer does both, because you'll get power from the trainer. You won't have to buy it. You wouldn't have outdoor power then, but you would still have a good idea. Yeah, you'd be able to do very structured training indoors.
So I have one of those smart trainers that can automatically adjust the resistance and simulate an outdoor environment with hills and stuff. And then
is it on the chain, or is it a drive train, or is it on a tire?
No, it's a drive chain.
So it's on the drive chain. Yeah. So
that's what I need to be doing then. I need to be on that and go through some of those sort of progressive wee workout things that come with those.
Well, yeah. So first thing I would do is just do a test of your current fitness, set a benchmark of where you're at now. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't have a race planned up, I would put another link in the calendar for 6 weeks' time. I'm going to do the exact same test like you would an experiment at school. Yeah. But I'm going to put 6 weeks of good training in. And then that motivates me. I would work in blocks, even the people I coach. we'd work in blocks of 6 to 8 weeks, because realistically, anything less than that, the improvements are going to be very minuscule. People think you train a lot, you don't gain that much. It's more about consistency over time, and realistically, for anyone to show any measurable amount of fitness increasing, it's about 6 to 8 weeks of training before you'd see, say, better power numbers or lower heart rates for certain paces. So that's something you could do at home, is just test yourself. You can do a ramp test, a 20-minute FTP test, and to set a benchmark. And this is the thing that scares people a lot of times. No one likes bad news, or they associate the test with, a poor score, but you have to set a marker in the sand and say, look, I'm going to be better than this in 6 weeks' time, and then that motivates me to do the training, number one, and then when you get the next test is better, it fills you with confidence. You've proven that you've gotten fitter, and then that helps confidence for your races. You've proven you're better. That's how I would work and operate. It's not enjoyable doing the test, but it has to be done.
One of the things that I have been able to take a little bit of comfort from is a lot of the lads and ladies within the club who are more experienced than I with regards to cycling have been quite kind in that it's both kindness and reassurance. They're saying, sometimes it might take 3 or 4 seasons for you to find your bike legs, is the phrase. And I think that's just the old school bit of, you'll get better at it the more you do it. So the more you do it, the better you'll get, the stronger you'll get. And in 3 years from now, you'll be really, really good compared to where you're at right now. Because I know whenever I first got on the bike, particularly with clips, I went to a junction and just fell over. Couldn't get my feet out of the clips.
I remember happened to me in Enniskillen one time. I was cycling up there and it fell straight into the lights as well. I think it's a rite of passage. You haven't read a clip on, everyone falls off. That's normal.
Yeah. So it's just
first time. Yeah.
So as much as it is just about, I suppose what I'm trying to say is, you will probably get a bit stronger and a bit more confident, and you will progress over time naturally just by doing more biking. But what you're telling me there as well is that those sort of focused, shorter turbo sessions are going to accelerate that process.
I would say definitely yes, because sometimes even those group rides, if you're taking turns at the front, now these are great for endurance rides, and that is a part of the training program, but they're very easy and such. So like sometimes if the group is very big, here in Doha, sometimes it could be 40 people, you're actually doing very little work, at the front. Like sometimes we could come home and our average speed might be almost, I'll do it in miles, like almost 26 miles an hour, but I did no work, because Qatar is one of the flattest countries in the world. It's actually the second flattest country in the world.
Right.
So our average speed are really high. But so you'd come home and you'd put it on Strava and everyone would be like, wow, he's so fit. But I did no work. The group was pulling us along and we were just... So like sometimes you could think you're doing a lot of training, or you could think, wow, my average speed's really high, but how much we at the front, or how much we actually work in that session. So sometimes the group sessions are good for like building that lower endurance, but I think structured turbo sessions during the week are very good. I would definitely recommend that.
That's brilliant. Just before we move from the bike, just a wee bit, or any of your thoughts on nutrition on the bike, and sort of what's typically what would be in your drink bottle?
Okay, so that's a good one. I've actually feel like I have a good knowledge base on this now. So basically, a few years ago when I was first starting triathlon, all the gels were fructose based. So basically, the limiting factor back then was they thought that everyone could absorb 60 grams of carbs per hour, and this would be from fructose. Mostly like these high five gels, but now there's been a real change in nutrition, and everyone has now moved towards sort of mixed gels, and basically all they're changing, and the ratio is even written on the back, it's 1 to point to 80. So what I'm saying there is they've now started to mix maltodextrin and fructose. To basically, in simple terms, maltodextrin is a very fast absorbing carbohydrate and fructose is a bit slower. So when you combine these two sugars, it's absorbed at different rates. Like the maltodextrin would be absorbed at a rate and the fructose would be absorbed at a rate, and then means you can then avail of higher grams of carbs per hour. So this is why you see athletes now, they're doing up to 80, 100 grams of carbs per hour. But the reason they can do this is because it's the mix of the type of sugar that they're using, basically. So really recently I've tried different products like Morton, the science and sports stuff, and I found Morton to be really good. Morton is a bit different from the other gels because they utilize pectin. I don't know, like I'm not a nutritionist, this is just a coach who has to know a little bit about this. So if you have any specific nutrition requirements, go to a nutritionist. I'm just saying what I've learned. So they use like pectin, which it's almost like creates what they call a hydrogel. So then this is absorbed in the stomach a bit slower, almost the same delivery as like tablets, like, you know, sort of pharmaceutical. They've learned this technology from them. So Morton is a bit different. I don't know if all of this is marketing, but other gels are just a mix of maltodextrin and fructose. So what I do is actually, I make my own gels sometimes. You can buy maltodextrin. I think you can buy 2.5 kilos for £5.
Okay.
So you can just make your own gels, the exact same stuff. Yeah, so like for basically the price of one gel, you could, which is 30 grams of carbs, you could have 2,500 of maltodextrin. So there's definitely ways of making your own cheaper nutrition, and it's the same stuff that they're using. So that's basically what I've been using now. I've been using Morton and Precision Hydration. I've been using those, and I would target around 80 to 90 grams of carbs per hour in a race. And that's something I've worked on, though, and I'm going to say a bit of caution. You have to practice this in training. You don't just go from 0 to 80, or, you know, I would do specific brick sessions. And I say brick sessions because you want to practice at your race pace intensity, because if you're working muscles or if you're running hard or you're cycling hard, sort of some of that blood is going away from the digestive system. So you have to kind of, you'll find this in races, you find it just didn't sit well in your stomach or didn't work well. That's my reasoning why. So you have to practice these in sort of brick sessions, which are race specific, and then you can kind of, I tried 60 grams this week, I'll try 70 grams this week, next week, just to see how it feels, you know. So have a little plan and work out what you're consuming per hour.
Good stuff. While very, very interesting, that information, and a wee bit scary too, with too many big crazy words, but essentially what you're saying there is those mixed gels are going to be a lot more beneficial for you, particularly over a longer distance. I'm taking out of that.
I think more modern gels would be a bit better in terms of your higher carbohydrate intake. Mm-hmm. So that's it. Basically, the only thing that was, there's just different types of sugar, and that's it. Maltodextrin and fructose. It just sounds more complicated than it is. It's not too.
And then
these companies try and make it seem like the most complicated thing, but it's just sugar, really. Sugar and electrolytes.
So then in your bottles then, are you just drinking water, or you go for an electrolyte mix, or is there extra carbs in?
I usually have Morton, so that'd be 80 grams in one bottle. That's why I like it, because it's quite a high content, and it kind of tastes like nothing, but it's 80 grams of carbs. And then I would have those in my 2 bottles, and then some I would just have salt tablets, those little pills. So I try and keep my bottles like water, carbs, electrolytes, gels, so it can kind of like, if it's a hotter race, I might have more tablets, so I can up. Because if you pre-mix your bottles, you're fixed to amount of electrolytes. You can't really move it on the fly. You can't, if you notice it's getting a bit hotter, you can take a little bit more electrolytes. So that's how I would organise me bike as such.
Yeah, good stuff. What about T2 then? Talk me through T2 very quickly.
T2, for half Ironman, I learned from my mistakes. I once tried to do it without socks, and I ended up I wouldn't recommend doing a half marathon with no socks. So anything less than a half Ironman, you can go sockless. But if you're going up to half Ironman, definitely put on the socks. That's all I've learned every time. And put them on quick. That's it. Go.
Yeah, put them on quick and take your helmet off too, because it looks better for the finishing photograph if you're not wearing a bicycle helmet. Good stuff. Right, so what would be your big points for, or your big things with regards to running? What's your top tips for the running part of triathlon?
So I've sort of changed a little bit recently. I've kind of moved away from doing lots of brick sessions because realistically, if you're very fit on the bike, you shouldn't be tired after the bike. Everyone says, "Oh, running on tired legs," but if you're actually quite fit, you won't have tired legs because you've done the right training and you're fit. So a lot of brick sessions we're doing them trying to like sort of what's it going to feel like on race day. So I'm not doing that many brick sessions recently. I suppose that's something I've kind of changed. And suppose volume isn't everything with triathlon. Runners traditionally would say they would talk in terms of like around 100 kilometers per week, or around, they would speak in mileage. But realistically, as a triathlete, we're getting a lot of cross-training benefits from swimming, cycling, so there's a huge amount of benefit from even swimming and cycling, which helps your running. So you maybe don't need as huge a volume as a runner, or as a triathlete, because you're getting a lot of benefits from the swimming bike. So I think changing my mindset that I'm actually a triathlete, and that running miles per week isn't really a determinant of good races as such. Now, you still have to do a fair bit of mileage, but I like to think of my training week in hours per week rather than distances. So, like this week, I'm looking at 13 hours, 14 hours of training. That gives me a better picture of, I only ran 30k, but it doesn't really tell you how many hours your heart and lungs were working. So I like to think of my training week as just in hours per week, and that gives you a sort of broader picture of swim, bike, and run. I think that, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. Yeah, and it's something that I'm gonna look at that, because I'm one of those people that go out and think I need to be running. When I'm not doing anything, I'll go out and do a run. I really don't need to be doing that, and all I'm probably doing is making myself tired.
Yeah. Now, you still have to, like, I'm not going to say to someone doing an Ironman, you can get away without doing any running, but like, there is a huge amount of crossover benefits from more cycling, or you might actually get more benefit from doing a good turbo session that day than running that. But there's days for the specific running, and sometimes I actually combine my running. I might run once in the morning and once in the evening, and then the next days I won't run for maybe 2 days. So a nice way to work if you're trying to plan your training week is impact and non-impact, because running is the most likely to get an injury from, just by the sheer fact you're hitting the ground repetitively. So when I plan a training week, especially for triathletes, I would try to not have them running on consecutive days. So if someone did a hard run session on a Wednesday, just an example, the Thursday would be more than likely swim or bike.
Yeah.
Makes sense, and then you can freshen up, and then they might do another run then on Friday, but they'll be a lot fresher from doing a non-impact swim and bike. That's kind of how I think that's a good, even you're self-coached, that could be a nice way to plan your week.
Yeah, no, that's sound advice. Barney, this podcast mixes a bit of information, a bit of inspiration, and a bit of music. Hit me up with a quality rock tune.
Okay, can it be like anything? Like, or does it have to be
anything at all. Whatever. What floats your boat? If you're, you know the way you've got all them lovely videos on Instagram. If you're picking a rocky sort of a tune, what are you going for?
Okay, Queens of the Stone Age. You got one?
Yeah.
You ain't got. You think I ain't worth $1? I think I won't. But I feel like a millionaire. Does that make sense?
That'll do, lovely.
Okay.
So was Queens of the Stone Age there, Barney? What's the story behind that? It's a bit of a funky tune.
It's a bit of a random one, but it's actually linked to cycling. I have that on my playlist for when I'm doing a turbo test. So it's a real, it's one sort of my pre-race pump music. So it just, I don't know, I'm not really that into rock, but that song, just when it builds up, it just gets me...
it fires you up.
It's worth at least 20 watts.
20 watts, courtesy of Queens and Stone Age. Mighty.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I was trying to think of my rock music. I don't know if I listen to everything, but that was the most heavy rock I could think of.
No, it's a cool tune. I might have to actually give them a bit of a listen. Barney, so far you've been a fantastic guest and a real wealth of information, and it's been great having all that sort of technical chat. I could spend hours chatting to you, to be honest. But I suppose I'm also interested to find out, and I want to try and break things down into sort of simple terms. And I like the idea of the podcast being a motivational platform and an inspiration for people. What advice would you give to anybody who's maybe thinking about trying out triathlon, but maybe they're thinking I'm not good enough, or maybe I'm not fit enough, or my swim isn't strong enough, or I haven't got a bike, or there's all these questions that we all had before we started our journeys. What would your advice?
Yeah, the biggest and hardest step, I suppose, is just not off the couch, but actually just going to that first training session. So, like, just to give Ulma Tri Club a real good plug, like, I was sort of a bit nervous about going to some of those sessions, and like, you couldn't have met a nicer bunch of people that are so welcoming. But people who are sort of maybe outside that circle, who haven't like broken into the circle, they might think, oh, they're super fit. But then once you get to know those people, or you swim up at the lock, you realise like just how nice they are and how supportive they are, and how much just that environment is it's made so many good athletes, and it's just a club that's improving the sport locally. But I suppose there is that barrier of someone who's never been before, and you just have to go, say hello to somebody, or even just say I'm a bit nervous tonight, to me any tips, and just break the ice that way. And you'd be surprised how much you'll just love it and enjoy it, and these people are only out to see you do better, which is a really nice thing in this day and age where, everyone's attention span is lost these days with our phones, and we're just living in them. But it's rare that you go to a club where everyone just wants to see you do well.
One of the things that I have come to learn is that when you can't see your potential, others can. Does that make sense to you? It probably does resonate with you as a coach, because you don't probably look at someone and look at their limitations. You're looking at potential and possibilities.
Yeah. I think actually most people, I think the thing with triathlon is most people can get to quite a high level. Like, I don't think it's that limited to, genetics, or because I coach a wide variety of people, and the people that actually are the best aren't maybe the most genetically gifted, say, the most sporty, but the people who are really consistent with their training, they end up being really, really good, rather than someone who's maybe more naturally talented and doesn't train enough. So I think as a sport, it really rewards those who work hard and train well, because I think they get a lot out of it as well.
The other thing, the other thing that you've said there was that, and particular earlier on in your triathlon journey, you saw big improvements over a very short period of time. At the beginning, you saw those big rewards after year one or after year two.
I suppose that might motivate someone. You're never going to improve as much as a beginner. Like, you could be taking 10, 20 minutes. Even people have done, say, longer races. They've taken hours of their race time, from when they first started. So, like, you're actually at a golden honeymoon phase when you first start. Like, you're only, like, you don't even need it. This might sound bad for business here, but you might even need a coach. You might just need to do a bit of training, and you'll be really surprised at how much you improve just with a little bit more training and a bit of structure. But the first years are probably the best, and I'll never improve as much as I did then. They're gone.
Yeah, those massive increments in performance are gone, but the glory years continue, Barney. That's what you have to hold on to, like,
Hopefully, yeah. A few more grey hairs.
Barney, just before we wrap up, how would people go about getting in touch with you if they wanted to get advice? Or are you taking on advice, or do you do online coaching, or how do people sort of hook up with you?
So my program is mostly online. I coach 20 to 20. It's about 23 athletes at the moment. Some of these, most are based in Doha. I have some in Kuwait and Bahrain. But basically local to where I live now in the GCC. So I'm mostly coaching locally here. I used to coach a girl from Ireland, but I'm not coaching at the minute. So I used to have at least one link to Ireland, but now it's mostly local to Doha. But yeah, and if people want to get in touch with me, my website is bmctry.com, and it's the same at Instagram. It's at bmctry. Any questions, always welcome. And I actually host free consultation calls for anyone who's interested in coaching. There's no obligation to sign up. You could even just have a call and just ask some questions. There, you can book it on the website for free. So yeah, that's how you can get in touch.
Cool. I'll put the links in the description of the podcast too. And just before we sign off, what's next on the horizon for you? When are we seeing Barney McCullagh racing again?
It's June 16th, and then it's off season. So a few weeks, only 4 weeks roughly now. I'm travelling to Nice with my family, and my wife and my daughter are coming as well. So racing has changed a bit now. It's usually we pick a nice destination with the race, and then my wife is also happy that we're going to Nice. So good, yeah. Best of both worlds. But then we'll travel home for a little bit as well. So finish up my season in Nice, and then I'll take a bit of a break. I take a break in July and August, because when we come back to Doha, it's just so hot. It's too hot. It's tough to do any good training, So then I start again for the next season.
Barney, thank you very much for coming on. Wish you and the family all the best and continued success, and all the best for Nice. Been a pleasure chatting to you. And
pleasure, same here. It's running fast. Really good. Happy to do it. Maybe we'll do a sequel. Who knows?
Well, a part 2, indeed. Barney, take care. All the best.
All the best. Take care. Bye-bye.